Take your career to the next level. The University of South Florida, St. Petersburg is offering a master's degree in digital journalism and design. Do the entire program from home and complete it in as little as 1 year. For more information, email journalism@usf.edu or call 727-873-4544. The cost is reasonable, the experience is invaluable. From the worldwide leader in journalism, truth, and democracy, this is the Poynter Report Podcast, a joint production between the Poynter Institute and the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Now here's your host from the Poynter Institute, Tom Jones.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I cannot tell you how excited I am for the guest for this episode. I'm not just saying this because she's here today. If you read my Poynter Report newsletter, you know that I write about this all the time. I absolutely believe it. This is the best sports columnist in the country and has been for quite some time. She's a longtime columnist at the Washington Post. Over the summer, we'll talk about this a lot. She left to go to The Atlantic. She is a Pulitzer Prize finalist, Associated Press sports editor, sports columnist of the year for 5 times. And in 2021, she was honored with the prestigious Red Smith Award for contributions to sports writing. Also wrote 13 books. I don't know how she's jammed all this into this incredible career, but it's the great Sally Jenkins. Sally, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure. 13 books, 2 good ones.
Oh, I don't know about that. The New York Times bestsellers list would disagree with that. We'll talk about your time. We were just talking real quick before we get into everything. We were just talking about, you've actually been to Poynter several times.
Yes.
And I remember it was probably now 15, 20 years ago, at least, you brought your dad down, Dan Jenkins, a great sports writer. You remember coming for this sports summit?
Sure. I'd love the Poynter. I came down once as a student and once as a teacher. And then you guys started convening these sports summits every year where sports writers would come in from around the country and talk about the state of journalism, sports journalism, but also sports issues and what we were covering, what we needed to cover better. And I told my dad, Dan Jenkins, who was a legendary writer for Sports Illustrated and then Golf Digest, I said, you'd love this place, because he was at heart a journalist, even though he became a best-selling novelist.
Sure.
I said, you'd love this place, and you need to come with me to one of these. And so he did. And so it was really great to see, my dad was probably 80 or something, standing around with like Will Leach and Jason Gay and Barry Svrluga, or, writers from much younger sports writers from all around the country. It was a meeting of minds. It was great.
You'll have to come back. St. Petersburg has actually blown up quite a lot since those days. We actually have a lot of restaurants now you can go to, and maybe a few watering holes as well. So
great town, love it.
Well, we appreciate you coming down there.
The geniuses are the kids who figure out how to go to college there.
That's right. And we're on a university campus right out to the University of South Florida. So this is the place to be. We'll get into your time at the Post, I'm sure, at some point. But I want to start off by talking about what you're doing these days. I think most sports fans and most readers who follow you were surprised over the summer when you announced that you were leaving the Post. It was a gorgeous farewell letter, by the way. You should enter that farewell letter in contests. But you decided to make a move to go to The Atlantic. Can you just take us behind the decision to go to The Atlantic at that time?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was happy at the Post. I didn't leave out of any unhappiness. And that's what I wrote in the letter. The Washington Post has given me everything I've got in this life, not just money, but purpose and an education. And, it was very formative. I went to work there at 24 years old. I had just turned 24. I was there some total of 30 years. So I didn't leave out of unhappiness. The Post entered a round of buyouts where they basically offered buyouts to staff. And if you were really, really senior, which I was at that point, it was too big an amount of money to consider turning down. You had to at least consider it, for your longtime financial security. That was a consideration. And then the other consideration is that, much as I love newspapers and much as my heart is in it, there's always a little frustration that you can't write a longer piece and take more time to get it right. And I had spent some years as a magazine writer, so I knew the feeling. And in 2 years ago, I wrote a piece that got a lot of attention about Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova. And that piece really sort of embedded a craving to do that kind of work more often. There's something that you get a real fever with a piece like that. You get with a really great long form feature where you've got great material and it. It's like having a fever, and until you get it written and perfected, it won't let you go. It really takes you over. And I miss that feeling. And the Atlantic Monthly, they do that all the time. That is what they do. They publish the best long form journalism for my money in the country. And they're run by Jeffrey Goldberg, who I think is, the great, there's been these great generational editors, right? And Goldberg is one of them. And, I was able to work for Ben Bradley. I was able to work for Marty Barron. And it was very tempting to go to work for Jeffrey Goldberg and see what he might do for my work.
It's the pieces you've written since you've been there, incredibly interesting. You had a one on sports statues, another one on Robert Redford. You had another one on the NBA gambling scandal. There was a piece you did about MAGA and Trump and UFC and all that. And then the most recent one that I read, it might be the most recent one you did, was on Leni Riefenstahl, who made a famous documentary way back in the day about the Berlin the Berlin Olympic Games. Really diverse set of topics. So is that part of, like you mentioned a little bit of that a minute ago, is that the appeal of, like, you don't have to write about the Commanders, you don't have to write about the Nationals ballpark or whatever. You can really explore some areas that you might not have been able to do anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, the key to a good column is you have to ask yourself what's bugging you. Like what's the little thing scratching at the door in the back of your mind, that wants in, and you have to go to that door and open it and kind of explore it. And with a traditional newspaper sports column, I felt pretty tethered to, having to serve mainstream sports readers. I went pretty far afield there too. But at the Atlantic, they don't have sort of a dedicated sports section. They don't have a cluster of dedicated sports readers that are local fans of local teams. It's just this much more sort of dispersed readership. And so, they put me on the culture desk. I actually belong to the culture section as a sports writer, which I think is right. I think that's where sports belongs. It's a significant piece of American culture and American civilization, if you even want to use a slightly pretentious word. And so I really like investigating it from that standpoint. And I always did that at the Post, but at the Atlantic, the sort of limits on that are off, And so this new documentary about Leni Riefenstahl, the German filmmaker, came out, which had some pretty revelatory information about just what a dedicated Nazi she was.
Right.
And Olympia, has won awards, and it's always lauded, that and Triumph of the Will are lauded as these great documentaries. And in fact, they're the furthest thing from documentaries, particularly sports documentary. They are absolutely fraudulent in terms of being real representations of the Berlin Games. They were very, very studied projects that were specifically designed to broadcast Hitlerian ideas.
Right.
And so I wanted to write that. I wanted to say, look, stop worshiping Leni Riefenstahl's documentary work. She's not a sports documentarian. She was a propagandist.
Is that when you come up with these topics, particularly something like that, is that just something like that it strikes you, or do editors come? How does the process work at the Atlantic?
It's collaborative. I come up with the sort of seed of the idea, and then my editor, Eleanor Barkhorn, who's a terrific senior editor who handles 4 different writers. Basically, I talk it through with her. And one of the things we've learned is we need to talk more, because I'll start out pretty unformed, and I'll file a draft that's pretty wandering, and she's great at sort of focusing it and getting it, when it goes too far afield, kind of bringing it back to the main point. She's always telling me, what's the main idea here? What is your main idea? And, when you have so much freedom, it's actually, it can be confusing, because you want to show off all your dance moves, and my editors are like, look, find your focus and just drive the truck right straight through,
I imagine when you wrote columns for the Post, most of them, not something like Chris and Martina, but just a general, like, I'm going to wake up today, I'm going to write about Dan Snyder or whatever, or something that's going on with the Commanders, that you basically write it and report it and do it all in one day. Is that different at the Atlantic? I mean, might it take several days to like for this Lenny Riefenstahl piece? Like, did it like from beginning to end? How long did it all take?
Oh, that took well over a week. I watched the documentary, and then I watched Triumph of the Will, and I watched Olympia, which is a 5-hour 2-part opus. And then I bought about 4 books on Leni Riefenstahl. I bought her biography, read that, read 2 other books on modern filmmaking and why she's regarded as, such a influential filmmaker. I mean, it probably took a week. It took well over a week. And then I had to frame it and write it. And then you usually revise something 2 or 3 times at the Atlantic. There's 5 full edit cycles.
Oh, wow.
Which is really, yeah. So you get read by your editor, then you get read by a top editor, and then you make revisions based on their feedback. So, and then you have a fact-checking process, which is very rigorous. And So you get read, might be 4 cycles. It's like 4 cycles, but it's very rigorous, and it's and they never touch it that they don't make it better. I mean, the interesting thing is, again, you spend your whole life in newspapers going, God, if I had had a little more time on that, you know, and you see in a newspaper column, you see all the things you wish you could rewrite. You don't have to worry about that at the Atlantic. You got all the chances in the world to rewrite it and make it better. You know,
are you okay with that? Like, I mean, we all have egos. We all think that everything we turn in is like, oh, this is really good, and you might get a little bit of pushback. You worked. I mean, there was a time you did work for Sports Illustrated, which was famous for maybe even over editing at some times. So what is it like now? I mean, somebody who's as accomplished as you are to be editing. So you hate that.
Yeah, I mean, I behave very badly with bad editing, but I'm an angel with good editing. And the Atlantic is nothing but good editing. And so they're seeing my angelic side. No, I mean, it's really fun to be made better. It's really fun to sort of, it's almost there. And then someone makes a word change and you're like, ooh, that's better, and you appreciate it, right? Sometimes they take out stuff that I liked, but usually, I know when I first put that word in there or that phrase or that sentence that, I'm going to see if I can squeak by with this one. You kind of have a sense that you're trying something and it may not work. I'll tell you one thing they're really, really good at. If a sentence doesn't scan, if the rhythm is even a little bit off, I mean, they catch it, like there's no clunkiness in the Atlantic if you read it. They're remarkable that way. They really have a sense of, they have ear for the rhythm of sentences and the progress of a piece.
Well, what I noticed too about places like the Atlantic is that when I assume every piece is edited pretty well, but they don't take the voice of the writer away. I can tell which writers wrote which pieces. It's not like everybody sounds the same, even after a lot of editing.
They don't. They have some institutional rules. The cliche is the great enemy of the Atlantic. I mean, if you use a lazy word, it's gonna get nailed. Right. If you use a lazy phrase, there's a lot of stuff like that, and some of the voice, like I have felt like I put a lot of English on the ball, right? I mean, I send stuff in that's got some real spin on it at times, and Tom Boswell, my great Washington Post colleague, used to try to tell me, Sally, if you would dial it down just one click, like go from 11 to 10. It would be better. And at the Atlantic, I think they know that with me. Like I can take a pretty big cut at the ball, and sometimes they'll turn the volume down on a sentence just a little bit, because something's a little too cute.
I don't know. I think Sally Jenkins at 11 is pretty cool sometimes.
Yeah, well, I don't. One thing the Atlantic doesn't do, like at the Washington Post. Obviously, I was very hard on Dan Snyder and Roger Goodell. I mean, I could really sort of bang ahead against the concrete, in print. And the Atlantic doesn't do that. They don't. There's a courtliness there. There's not a lot of attack in that magazine, which I like being part of. Frankly, I always felt that those were the easiest columns and the hottest takes. And to really go after someone in print is the easiest thing you do.
Yeah.
And I always felt somewhat ambivalent about that, even though I was good at it.
I think for the audience, I mean, I've always compared when you write those hot takes columns, it's almost like giving them ice cream. Sometimes it's like everybody enjoys it, everybody likes it, but you can't eat. You don't want to feed them ice cream every day.
No, and you really have to reserve it for people who can handle it and have it coming.
Right.
You know, I mean, if a column by me about Roger Goodell is the worst part of his day, he's living a very good life. You know,
That's true.
I mean, you try not to shoot down, right?
Right.
Yeah.
When you go about choosing your topics now, how much is it like, this is what I want to write about, and then the audience will follow along, or I'm going to write something that I never thought it was a good idea to write necessarily topics that I think the audience wants. I've always approached it like, I'm going to write something that I want to write, and if the audience wants to come along, they'll enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so there are some things that really hit the nerve, right? There's some things that really hit the public nerve, and you can sort of feel them, you know, like when a racehorse breaks down at the Kentucky Derby, or Serena Williams gets into a thing with the chair umpire at the U.S. Open at 10 o'clock at night. I mean, there are certain events that are sort of electrifying, you know, and you jump on those because you know that's all anyone's going to be talking about the next day. And so I don't see that as like clickbaiting or chasing an audience. I see that as sort of, again, participating in the culture.
Right.
But it did get tempting. Like, you know, we were very worried about numbers at the Washington Post, and it's a very insidious, lousy influence. You know, once you start looking at numbers, you start limiting your imagination, your powers of imagination, and you stop surprising readers. And that is death. Honestly, when you stop surprising people, things become so predictable and so boring, and there's no reason to open the Washington Post sports section anymore. And they have managed to really, really avoid that. But there's a lot of internal pressure around numbers. You know, there's no question.
For years, you worked at a place that I thought was the gold standard of newspaper sports departments. I worked at a couple of good sports departments: St. Pete Times, Tampa Bay Times, and the Minneapolis Star Tribune. And if you looked around the country, like in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, places like the Dallas Morning News had like a staff of 1,000. It seemed. New York Times, obviously, Boston Globe with an incredible section, Detroit Free Press, Chicago Tribune, LA Times, a lot of good ones. You, though, I thought worked at a place that was just, like I said, the gold standard. You had George Solomon, the legendary George Solomon, is the sports editor. People like Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon and Thomas Boswell and Kevin Blackistone and Liz Clark, and I can go on and on and on and on and on.
John Feinstein,
John Feinstein,
John Ed Bradley, you know, Dave Shine and Chuck Culpepper, the list of Eli Saslow, you know, great Pulitzer Prize winner.
Yeah.
I mean, look, David Remnick was a Washington Post sports writer as a young man. I mean, the list of people that have come through there, some of our greatest foreign correspondents, you know, started as sports writers. You know, Isabel Kershudian, you know, who went on to cover the Ukrainian war. You know, it's just Chico Harlan.
Well, Chelsea Janes, right, left for a while to cover a presidential campaign, right?
Yeah, I mean, we all got recruited, you know, at various times. It was funny because, you know, our sports editors would get a little frustrated because other sections were always plundering us and asking us to, you know, come over and help with election coverage. Or, I mean, I covered Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Sandy, and I did multiple election year pieces on, you know, Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton. You know, we all got borrowed by the rest of the paper because the writing staff was so strong. The writing and reporting staff was so strong.
What was it like working there? I mean, was it
like being at the New York Yankees?
Oh,
you
really?
know?
But yeah. I mean, is there pressure that comes with playing shortstop for the New York Yankees too?
Yeah, it's good pressure, but yes. Yeah, no, the pressure is, you know, you can't, you want to write up to your colleagues, you know, you don't want to be, you can't, one thing that it does, you can't ever mail it in.
Yeah.
Right. Because, you know, everyone around you is so good and so dedicated that, you know, this internal ethic would really take over. I mean, I always said, you know, we would go off to the Olympics, and if our editor got sick or something, there was no problem because we were such a self-regulating staff. You know, we could have run without an editor. We could have edited each other.
Yeah.
It was a really great, Barry Zverluga could be sports editor, you know? So yeah, it was just a beautiful, beautiful collaborative feeling. And we were all really good friends, real good friends, still are.
Yeah, it's funny. Like people talk about like what makes Pardon the Interruption so great, and it's Will Bond and Cornetter's like we're just recording now what we did in our office for.
It's true. I used to be part of the audience that would cram into Tony's office. There would be 10 or 12 people jammed into this cubicle listening to them yell at each other and just dying laughing, and listening to them debate and argue and jumping in ourselves. And so when that show became a hit, it wasn't surprising to us because we'd been watching it for years, privately.
My thing was I loved that that show was a hit, and I also knew what was coming, that these guys eventually are going to stop writing. They're just going to do this full time, which unfortunately was, but I don't blame them. But I mean, you could tell that was the way it was headed. So,
that TV money,
which, by the way, I'm imagining you had a lot of opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
And it was a choice not to?
I didn't want to worry about my hair. I just didn't.
Wait,
I didn't want to worry about
on
my
TV.
Appearance.
What are you talking about?
you have to, as a woman, you have to worry about your appearance way too much. And also, I mean, honestly, like I knew the money was seductive, and I knew I wanted to stay a writer. I was careful about TV because I really didn't like worrying about my appearance. And B, I really thought, this could kind of curdle your taste for writing,
Right.
Writing's really hard work. I mean, there's a lot of avoidance and a lot of procrastination. And if there's some way some way to tell a story in an easier mode, you tend to want to go there. And I just was pretty careful about trying not to get seduced.
Right, right. Well, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of sports writing. Stick around. Hey, everybody. If you enjoy this podcast, can I ask a quick favor? Make sure you're also subscribed to the Poynter Report newsletter, where I bring you the latest media news and analysis every weekday. If you're already subscribed, thank you. But don't stop there. Check out the other great newsletters we offer at poynter.org/newsletters. Every Wednesday, my colleague Kristen Hare spotlights what's happening in local newsrooms across the country in local edition. On Fridays, my editor Ren LaForme rounds up the smartest stories from Poynter in his newsletter Open Tabs. If you care about misinformation, fact-checking, and getting to the truth, you'll love Factually. And if you're looking to sharpen your writing, leadership, and ethics skills, Poynter Pro Weekly has you covered. Go to poynter.org/newsletters and sign up today. Welcome back. And hey, just a quick reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a good review and like. That really helps us out a lot. And if you're just driving around in your car or going on a run or whatever, you can check us out on Spotify and Apple and all the other places that you get your podcast. Sally, people ask me, I went to Poynter. I was a Tampa Bay Times sports columnist. I went to Poynter in 2019. And they asked me, do you miss your job as a sports columnist? And my answer to them always is, what I miss doesn't exist anymore. It feels like, and there's like the usual gripes about player access and resources and all that. But I do think that a lot has changed in terms of the ability to stay relevant. And we were talking about TV a minute ago. You have to be on social media constantly, do podcasts, do videos. And it just seems like things have really changed. Am I sounding like a get off my lawn guy, or has like sports writing actually changed?
I mean, I think it's changed somewhat, but I mean, I'll be frank. One of the reasons I went to the Atlantic was because there's not social media pressure there. They are wedded to old-fashioned magazine journalism, so that was a factor. But I really feel like you have to be careful not to wind up one of those people who says the Bible should still be in Latin. And I think that, I think social media can be really, really interesting for telling stories. My dad became a great tweeter. He was great on Twitter because he had a real facility for boiling things down into one really great sentence. And Twitter, that's a craft, that's not garbage. You can use it for garbage purposes, or you can use it to be smart, in that forum. And so all those forums have that potential. TikTok videos can be really, really interesting ways of telling abbreviated stories. And so I'm interested in all of that. And I actually see, I feel like there is a a future where multimedia storytelling, I mean, sports really lends itself to that. First of all, the sound of a great sports event is unmistakable and unique, and it's very hard to get that down in print. Some of multimedia lends itself to that. The ability to get snippets of player interviews right after the game up on Twitter quickly. I mean, that's fascinating. That's great for the audience, and that's great for newspapers, or media organizations. So I don't have a problem with all that stuff. I actually think there's a potential for some kind of coherent, coordinated multimedia sports product that is very documentary, very immediate, that moves, but also has great writing.
So, I mean, I imagine you get young people all the time come to you, like, what advice do you have? I don't know if anybody wants to be, Gary Smith anymore. I don't know if anybody wants to.
Oh, I think they do. I mean, right before I left the Post, I mean, we have I still say we, the Washington Post has a great crew of very young sports writers. They're 22, 23, 24 years old. They're very, very talented. And they want to write. They're Candace Buckner. She's not in her 20s anymore, but Candace Buckner wants to write. She's had chances to do other things, and she wants to write. So I don't worry about the future of the business. It's going to be a hybrid, because I think that's the way media is going. Across the board, you have to offer readers different ways of consuming the news or consuming stories. But I do think that the Atlantic has a bit of a built-in advantage, because it doesn't have many competitors. I mean, there's the New Yorker. I mean, very few people are doing what they do. Everyone is doing TikTok. Everyone is doing social media. Everyone is doing, short stories, shorter. And
right.
So you wander into like areas of real saturation. And then to me, the mistake that a place like the Washington Post is making is by moving into the saturation instead of away from it.
Right.
You should be emphasizing what differentiates you.
I would. Is there still a place for? I know the Athletic does still some long form journalism in terms of sports.
Yeah, I mean, I find the Athletic, though, I find it hard to sort out their priorities. They have a lot of stuff up. And some of it is interesting and good, and some of it is just sort of serving local constituencies. And Steve Ginsburg is a brilliant editor, by the way. I wish he had stayed at the Washington Post. We lost him to the Athletic, and but I think like the Athletic is a lot for me, and I have trouble sort of finding things sometimes. Like that would be the one thing I would do a little different with that site is. Emphasize the good stuff more.
It's like, it is like a buffet where everything, like a lot of it looks really good. I don't know where to start with it.
Yeah.
And you try to customize it to your home team, but sometimes I don't want to read about my home team that day. I want to read about the NBA gambling scandal or something that they're telling me this is really important and this is really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I love about the Washington Post sports section is that they are very imaginative about picking out what they think is a really good story. And then, they were in a phase where they were able to get some video to accompany like really good pieces. I mean, the piece I did on J.B. Mooney and the piece I did on Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova, those pieces had hugely wonderful video and audio components. J.B. Mooney, there was a lot of people said they preferred the recorded version of the story than the visual version, because we had a great sound guy who had created a really interesting spoken version of the piece that people could listen to like a podcast, right?
Right.
I mean, that's great storytelling. That's great, fascinating ways to experiment with storytelling. And I think that sports sections should be doing more of that. It takes some resources and some commitment, but when it works, it's marvelous. I mean, the Post did a really great thing about Ovechkin's slap shot, where they did a video and they had Ovechkin do a slap shot, and the camera, if you look at the video, as the viewer, the puck is coming right straight towards your forehead. So you really get a sense of the dynamism of that shot. So these tools are there to be used, and And so I feel like, again, let's try to find the things that differentiate great stories as opposed to wandering into what everybody's already doing because they think they're supposed to be doing it.
Right, right. I know there's been a lot of changes to Washington Post, and there's a lot of going on with ownership and with the editorial board and the direction that they're going. But the newsroom still putting out terrific work. And the sports department is still putting out tremendous work. Could you have stayed and been happy continuing there?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, had the Atlantic offer not come, I would have been very happy staying there. I will say this. I am really relieved not to wake up every morning worrying about the future of the Washington Post. It was really weighing on me. I mean, I put my heart and soul into the place. I felt, I tried to help in whatever ways I could. I was doing all kinds of stuff for the publishing side whenever they asked me. And, I was really, really worried about the future of the paper. And, it's sad, and it's depressing to feel like you're constantly swimming upstream the way they are from a business standpoint. And I'm a little relieved to be out from under that. And I have survivor's guilt.
I was going to ask that. I'm glad you brought it up because I was trying to think in my mind, what's a delicate way to ask this? It was a real gut punch when you left. I mean, the headlines across the country, like, oh, the Washington Post, they've taken a lot of blows. This one was a big blow. Sally Jenkins just left,
I mean, I'm a little mystified by that because we've lost so many great journalists from those pages. So Ashley Parker was a blow, but anyway.
You're a giant, whether you want to admit it or not, Sally. You're a big deal.
Well, part of it, I think, was, I was so loyal to the Post, and I think everybody knew that. And so I think there was some fear that, that somehow my loyalty to the Post had been broken, and that's why I was leaving. And that's not the case.
Right.
I think that the Post has to be right-sized. And so the buyouts and the downsizing of the paper has to happen. And that is not a villainous act by the publisher or the editor, or the owner. That is simply something that has to happen. The Post had gotten way, way, way too big by like 400, 500 people, maybe more, particularly in today's business climate. So that was a reality that I didn't blame anybody for. And I think that the people who are trying to run the Washington Post are taking a raft of shit that they don't deserve in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think there was a lot there. They were getting in an arms race with the New York Times, basically. And,
Yeah, I mean, so you have to pick your priorities, right? When you're losing money, you have to really, really pick your priorities carefully. And I credit Matt Murray for really stabilizing the newsroom during absolute, freaking hurricanes of controversy, and the fact that they still turn out absolute must-read stories every single day, bonanza pieces that you absolutely have to read if you want to understand the Trump administration. I mean, that's a real credit to them. And it's a credit, again, to the self-sustaining ethic inside the newsroom. It's a magnificent newsroom full of dedicated people, and it's not going anywhere from that standpoint. You will have to, that newsroom is like Rasputin. You'll have to stab it and shoot it and wrap it in chains and throw it to the bottom of a river before those people stop doing great reporting.
Right. Yeah, I saw a story the other day. They do fun stuff too. Like the other day, Jeff Edgers had a story on the 40th anniversary of the Aha song "Take on Me," stuff like that. Just special.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, you've written 13 books. I think that's the number, right?
I've lost track.
I think it's 13. I thought, but you've written bestseller, New York Times bestsellers. You've written about Lance Armstrong and Pat Summitt. You've written your most recent book, The Right Call: What Sports Teaches Us About Work, which was a fascinating book. Any more interest in books? Like, would you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've got two books cooking. One is kind of a follow up to The Right Call. Mm-hmm. That book was about basically trying to take all the knowledge I've acquired and all the people I've talked to over the years and sort of, arriving at, why are sports really important? Are they just entertainment? Are they just supposed to awe us? Or are we supposed to learn something about human performance from them? And I'm very much subscribed to the second part of that proposition. We're supposed to learn something from them, and we can import lessons from them into our own lives. Well, what are those lessons? And so I'm going to do a follow-up that looks, I think I'm going to try to look at locker rooms and locker room dynamics and the sort of omerta ethic inside locker rooms and, how organizations either hold together or blow apart. I'd like to investigate that because I think, again, there's a lot of sort of real-time learning that you can do from closely examining those areas, and saying, well, what is this really about? So that's number one. And number two, I've been working for several years on a biography with a partner named John Stauffer, who's a professor up at Harvard on, and this is really far afield, okay? We've been working on a biography of Charles Sumner, the great abolitionist senator from Massachusetts, who was caned on the floor of the Senate for an anti-slavery speech.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
wow,
we're plugging along at that.
That sounds awesome. You've had a fascinating career, a fascinating life. Any thoughts of writing a memoir at some point?
Oh gosh, I mean, in a way, the right call is my memoir. Like the books are. No, I don't think so. I don't think. Who cares?
I think a lot of people care. I think would be interested, like your relationship with your dad, growing up as a sports writer.
I might write about. I might write about my dad. That I could see. I could see. I whether it would sustain 300 pages, I don't know. But that's worth trying.
I think it would be great. Before I let you go, a couple quick sports topics. NBA gambling, but gambling in all sports. How big of a deal is this? Should sports leagues be really concerned, or are these just the little hiccups that we're seeing?
I think so. Actually, I think that there's a simple solution to the immediate crisis, which is to ban live in-game betting. I mean, just like horse racing, once the starting gate opens, you don't get to run up to the window and place a bet, right?
Right.
So I think that if you're going to be in business with the sports books, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the NFL, they should completely ban live in-game betting. And that takes care of things like prop bets. And that takes care of some sap being tempted to, throw a ball instead of a strike so he can help an old friend place a bet and make a little extra cash, off the books or whatever. Athletes, as much money as they make, they get the hell taxed out of them and they support lots of other people. And I think that the cash is tempting for them, no matter how big their contract may appear to be. Remove the temptation, okay? Remove the temptation for some poor guy to go, well, I'm not affecting the outcome of the game if I just change my pitch on one throw,
right.
So take the prop bets away, and that really solves a lot of problems. Take prop bets away, take away live in-game betting,
I thought you really hit on it there. I thought that contracts had gotten so big. This isn't like the 1919 Black Sox where guys were, angry at the owner for not getting paid. But you're right. I mean, no contract is big enough that there's not some temptation there. So.
Well, and so many of those contracts are incentive based, right? And so they announce really, really big numbers, but they don't. A lot of times they don't turn out to be worth all that much, and not. Don't get me wrong. Elite pro athletes are not underpaid. Okay, don't mistake me here. But what I am saying is they have a lot of expenses, and and look, just because someone pays you a lot of money doesn't mean you actually know how to spend it wisely.
Right. Two more quick ones. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, and I thought that the prosecutors, Kash Patel, did a real disservice to the NBA by framing this as an NBA crisis. I wrote a piece about that for The Atlantic. If you really read the indictments, this is not an NBA problem. In fact, Chauncey Billups wasn't even working in the NBA when he played poker in Vegas back in 2019. This was a headline grab by Kash Patel, the head of the FBI. And as the Major League Baseball indictments show, this is a pervasive problem, not an NBA problem. And it's a sports book problem. The sports books, if they want to be in business with these leagues, you have to mandate somehow that they can't permit live in-game betting that's going to alter competition.
Right. Real quick, baseball. Is it baseball back, or do we just have a good World Series?
Oh my God, it was the greatest World Series ever, wasn't it?
It was terrific. But will they be able to carry that momentum? I think they might because of the pitch clock and a bunch of other things. But I do think baseball is having a resurgence. Do you feel that way?
I do. And part of it is some of it's led by the Dodgers. Dave Roberts is a once in a generation manager who they're geniuses at amassing talent. A lot of it is their Japanese connection.
Yeah.
The Dodgers seem to have been smarter than other people about Japanese prodigies, But at any rate, yes, I do think baseball's having a resurgence. And, every sport is personality driven. You go through dry spells, you go through fallow seasons where sports aren't that interesting because the personalities in them aren't as dynamic as they could be or something. But yeah, baseball is having a really lovely era.
Speaking of sports personalities, the WNBA's having their moment, kind of.
Yeah.
With
well,
Clark,
if they can get a decent, some decent leadership, yeah.
Well, that's my question. I'm like, the future to the WNBA, is it promising, or are they at a real crossroads right now?
It's brilliant. I mean, did you see last night, Hannah Hidalgo from Notre Dame had 44 points. There's more talent coming. It's the arc of performance in the WNBA. It's like this. It's like if you charted the graph, it's just they're getting better and better and more skilled all the time. And it's that arc itself is fascinating to watch. And I think that's what people see in Caitlin Clark. They see a breakthrough athlete, and they're going to see the same in a Hannah Hidalgo or, some of the other, Sarah Strong at UConn. Force on the boards and a force in the middle who can knock down a three like she breathes. That's new. There's these new talents coming along and it's thrilling. And if the commissioner will get out of the way and get some decent officiating to clean the game up so that it's not rugby, so that the beauty of the game, the guard play and the post play can be as elegant as they want to be, then I think they've got a real winner.
Well, I appreciate it, Sally. We have to also compliment you. I think up until now, Oliver Darcy from, formerly of CNN, now with Status, had the best background. But I like your background there with the painting.
Thank you.
Beautiful, yeah. So
I've got a lovely painting on the wall, and I've got my World War II flight jacket hanging there. Yeah. My favorite coat. So.
That's great background and great conversation. Sally Jenkins, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Same, loved it too. Appreciate it. Have me back.
Yeah, we'd love that. And we have to come back to St. Pete too as well.
Yes.
Check out some of our past episodes, including conversations with Oliver Darcy and Chuck Todd and Jen Psaki and Jeremy Barr, many others. If you like what you hear and see, give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And a quick note, we usually come out with new episodes every 2 weeks. We're planning something special for the holidays. It's a special episode. It'll be the season finale. It's probably going to come out in 3 weeks. Check out my newsletter, The Poynter Report, to find out the latest on that. Thanks again. Thanks again to Sally Jenkins.
Thank you for listening to the Poynter Report Podcast. The views and opinions of this episode's guest and the host are not associated with nor reflect those of the University of South Florida. The podcast is produced by the Department of Journalism and Digital Communication at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg. Executive producers are Elliot Weiser and Ren LaForme. Our producers are Tom Jones and Caden Knowles. Production assistant is Ariel Menkes, and our director is Christopher Campbell. And a special thank you to Neil Brown and Dr. Mark Walters.